The language spoken by the Wakandans is actually a real-world African language, referred to as Xhosa. It's spoken as both a primary and secondary language by almost 20 million people across South Africa and Zimbabwe. I'm not sure if the MCU will ever overtly acknowledge that, but it's mentioned in the subtitles on Disney+, so I consider that canon. The language's vocabulary possesses one of, if not the, heaviest functional load of click consonants, which definitely tracks with how advanced the nation of Wakanda is. Wakanda's an Afro-futurist cultural melting pot, and this is just the surface. After some phenomenal world building, we truly begin the events of the story in Oakland, California in 1992. King T'Chaka confronts Prince N'Jobu as he had given key information on how to steal vibranium to Ulysses Claw. He knew this because his dear friend James, Zuri, son of Badu, was leaking this information to the king himself, as both were Wakandan spies stationed in America. The way they show off their true colors is by revealing a glowing purple inner lip tattoo, which we can assume is their Wakandan name written in their native language. While this particular tattoo practice is not unique to the Oakland community, it was a pretty popular trend in the early 90s. The thought of it seemed hip, cool, and rebellious. You could hide whatever naughty four-letter word you wanted to right inside your mouth, and nobody would know unless you wanted them to. But that's not the only lip service paid in this film, huh? Throughout the film, we see various elders from across the nation sporting an ornamental dental plate that stretches around their lower lip. Makeup designer Joel Harlow borrowed heavily from the Mercy tribe of Ethiopia to craft that particular status symbol. Traditionally, one would have to remove their lower teeth while piercing and stretching their lower lip to get the plate to fit. Thankfully, through the magic of practical effects, the makeup department managed to craft a convincing replica based on the dental impressions of the actors. Opening the film in Oakland was an intentional choice on behalf of director Ryan Coogler. Being the town he grew up in, it serves as an extension of himself and shows how this movie is his story. In an interview with the Washington Post, Coogler talks about his childhood and how, quote, "The interesting part about being black is that until you open your mouth, people don't know where you're from," end quote. He thought that it would be cool to open on the Oakland scene where you'd have these two guys that the audience would just assume were two black dudes, but once they literally open their mouths, both the audience and the characters learn that they're from Africa. You would not be able to tell the difference otherwise because they look like people that you would normally know. But that's not the only significance behind opening in Oakland. That city is the birthplace of the Black Panther political party, whose origins have nothing to do with the titular superhero. That party was founded by Stokely Carmichael, a then well-known spokesperson of the SNCC, who's credited with coining the phrase Black Power. It's safe to say that the creators of Black Panther and the Black Panthers took notes from Stokely. Black Panther first appeared in the pages of Fantastic Four issue number 52, with his adventures continuing in the Jungle Action series and various team-ups until he got his own solo book in 1997, penned by Ed Hannigan and drawn by Jerry Bingham. His early stories in Jungle Action have proven foundational to stories that would follow, both in the comics and film itself. His premiere solo story in Jungle Action issue number 5 debuted M'Baku, aka Manape, whose portrayal in the movie could definitely be considered a glow-up. The following issue would introduce Killmonger, who actually had him defeating T'Challa in combat, tossing him over the waterfall. Later arcs would actually have Killmonger break Claw out of jail to team up with him, as seen in the movie. Much like in the comics, Black Panther made his MCU debut in another film, Captain America: Civil War. Thankfully, the gap between that movie and Black Panther was only 2 years instead of 11 for T'Challa to rightfully receive his own eponymous adventure. Remember when I mentioned that M'Baku's supervillain name in the comics was Manape? Guy dressed up as a white gorilla to fight T'Challa in an attempt to take the throne, and yeah, I think the movie makes a good cause for adaptational changes. Still, the spirit of the character remains in Winston Duke's performance. When all is lost, those who support T'Challa go to the Jabari for aid in their attempt to stop Killmonger from shipping weapons across the globe. In one of the many moments where Everett Ross gets dunked on, M'Baku literally barks at him like an ape in order to intimidate him, threatening to feed Ross to his children. Thankfully, this was an act and the Jabari tribe are actually vegetarian. This was improvised on behalf of the actor portraying M'Baku, Winston Duke. He wanted to intimidate Ross in a way that was totally his own, and he absolutely nailed it. And hey, after his intimidation, T'Challa's mom even refers to him as Great Gorilla M'Baku. When Everett Ross wakes up in Shuri's lab and starts wigging out, Shuri hits him with the good old quote, "We had discussions about the world, colonizer," end quote, which might have been the most biting joke to come out of the MCU until Yelena Belova's dig at how the Red Room cut out her ovaries in Black Widow. Anyway, on the surface level, this is a simple dig at how white Americans carry the legacy of colonialism with them. However, those who don't know their history know that that legacy started with the British. And wouldn't you know it, Everett Ross's actor Martin Freeman is British. It just adds on layers and layers of entertaining discomfort. Although I'm kinda surprised that colonizer hasn't entered the lexicon in a similar fashion. Comic fans have noticed that the mask that Killmonger steals from the museum resembles one worn in issue number 38 of Reginald Hudlin's Black Panther in its design. But not enough people have taken note of the mask's cultural roots. The mask's design is inspired by that of the Igbo tribe of what is now Nigeria, and it's now known as Umdikte, which I'm so sorry if I butchered that, but it means Time of the Brave, depicting a fearful and aggressive character. Given Eric's character, yeah, that definitely tracks. His unbridled rage at his extended family had been smoldering since he was a child, with their abandonment of him and every black person not living comfortably within the walls of Wakanda, pushing him to take back the throne and give power to his people across the globe. It's no secret that Michael B. Jordan, who played Killmonger, is a huge anime fan. And it's even less of a secret that Killmonger's military vest bears a shocking resemblance to that of Vegeta from Dragon Ball Z. The armored vests with yellow straps over blue, long-sleeved tops are enough of a visual cue to call the similarities into question. But there are some narrative parallels too. Both Vegeta and Killmonger are from a royal family that hate the main character in part for their social status. Both feel abandoned after the death of their fathers, and both are the best characters in their respective stories. It's unclear as to whether or not this was intentional, although Michael B. Jordan has stated in interviews that he's not sure if the similarities were intentional, but he wouldn't be surprised since director Ryan Coogler is a big anime fan as well. Unlike Vegeta, however, we probably will not be seeing Killmonger come back to life in the MCU, although Kevin Feige has expressed interest in doing a live DBZ cinematic universe, so he's got his Vegeta right there. Wait, I just advocated for more Western live-action anime adaptations. This video is officially cursed. I'm sorry. It's become a common cliche in modern sci-fi where advanced technology is presented as CGI sand that can morph into anything, be it the supposedly advanced Kryptonian technology in Man of Steel to the morphing beds in Star Trek Discovery. Black Panther is no stranger to this, with how all of T'Challa's gear can morph around him. Although if you look closely, this wasn't always the case in Wakanda. The opening flashback shows King T'Chaka showing a hologram of Ulysses Klaue to Prince N'Jobu with a normal super advanced hologram, for 1992 anyway, but by the modern day, we can see that their hologram communicators follow the CGI sand motif. Although at least it's used in a unique way here, showing that two different people can combine their streams in an organic fashion. I guess this is basically like a vibranium-powered Wakandan Zoom call? As much as I enjoy nitpicking lazy Hollywood shorthand, the use of futuristic sand has much more precedent here than in other media. I've talked about the opening flashback a few times, but the real opening of the film is the jaw-dropping animated one-take that illustrates the history of Wakanda, beginning with the vibranium meteorite crashing into the Earth. This visual motif of black sand helps illustrate how Wakanda's history is vibranium, and even gives it a mythic weight, like how we're all born in the primordial cosmic dust of the Big Bang. I'm glad that we can all agree that the opening animation is a phenomenal example of world building, but it's also a vessel for one of the larger themes of the movie. During the vibranium-infused history lesson, we are shown that as the world descends into chaos, Wakanda isolated itself from the world. Examples of the world falling into chaos include all manner of war, the atomic bomb, and also the entire history of slavery. Yeah, that last one's kind of a biggie. The depiction of slaves being shuffled onto a ship in this shorthand for the Middle Passage. The forced voyage of African slaves across the Atlantic Ocean to the New World. That being glossed over in this sequence foreshadows the larger issue of Wakanda's hypocrisy, making the transition of T'Challa asking why they are still hidden to the Oakland flashback that much more powerful. Which is why I would have said if this was T'Challa asking T'Chaka, but once you've seen the movie you realize it's actually Eric asking his dad. And that fits perfectly considering N'Jobu had the exact same question in mind for T'Chaka himself. One of the criticisms of the film is that there are so many characters that some relations felt underdeveloped, and that's a fair critique, for as much importance is being put on Ramonda, T'Challa's mom, grieving the loss of her son and husband in Wakanda Forever, it's unfortunate that they never had much screen time together. It's a problem a lot of ensemble cast movies face, but we can reap just as many benefits as negatives by looking back at Black Panther's supporting cast. Killmonger is one of the best superhero movie villains of all time. M'Baku has more memes made of him than T'Challa, and Shuri steals every scene that she's in, being a super genius with an eye for style that outstrips Tony Stark, but the best part of her personality is how she shows no respect for archaic cultural traditions. Flipping off T'Challa while walking away in her introductory scene was enough to cement her as an MCU fan favorite, even if her mom chewed her out for it within seconds. Ramonda didn't even see it happen. That's just how good of a mom she is. It'd be funny if she had developed vibranium technology that, literally gave her eyes in the back of her head, but if you pay close attention, she noticed T'Challa's reaction to getting flipped off, so, that's family for you. Ryan Coogler is mentioned being a fan of director Barry Jenkins' Academy Award-winning film Moonlight, noting that Barry was an advocate for Coogler when making Black Panther, which brings us back to Oakland, California. Particularly the final scene of the movie, we see Shuri showing off a Wakandan airship to a bunch of local kids, and one child in particular gets the last line of the movie saying, quote, "Who are you?" End quote, which might be the best ending scene in any solo Marvel movie. That child was played by actor Alex R. Hibbert, who played a starring role in Moonlight. Hopefully he'll show up in Wakanda Forever as the same kid aged up, cause, well, he's earned it. The mid-credit scene of Black Panther brings us to the United Nations, preparing to open communication and foreign relations with Wakanda and the rest of the world. T'Challa states that in times of crisis, the wise build bridges and the foolish build barriers. We must all look after each other as if we were one single tribe. It's a succinct, powerful moment that shows how Killmonger had opened T'Challa's eyes to Wakanda's isolation, ultimately being a detriment to their people and the world as a whole. Wakanda taking great measures to maintain its insularity and to secure their anonymous global identity fostered dissatisfaction that prompted T'Challa's late uncle N'Jobu to jump to extremism and cooperate with terrorists like Claw. Even audiences of the time read T'Challa's speech as a direct response to the growing sentiment of the infamous Trump-era Build a Wall campaign. Few signs of Black Panther's impact on the popular culture at large are more prevalent than the cross-armed Wakandan salute. It has not replaced the casual wave of the hand, but I still see people doing this as a farewell, mostly at comic conventions and wherever I've cosplayed as Captain America, but still, hey, it's awesome. And the story behind how it came to be is equally awesome. Considering this is how to say hug in American Sign Language, it's the perfect fit for a motion that's performed by the royal family. It manages to communicate respect in both an official and familial fashion, and considering all of Wakanda sees each other as one big family, it fits. Ryan Coogler also took note of how Egyptian pharaohs were buried with their arms crossed when thinking of the salute, and now I'm remembering that Chadwick Boseman is no longer with us, and this creative decision was unfortunately prophetic. Rest in power, King. If managing to star in 4 Marvel movies along with a dozen or so other projects while battling cancer in your 50s does not make you a real-life superhero, I don't know what will.
And as you can see, I am not dead.
This was a much heavier video than one might have anticipated, but that should be expected when talking about a movie that had so much passion and history put into it. What was your favorite part about Black Panther that doesn't get enough attention? Equally important, do you think that Wakanda Forever will actually give us a link to Claw's SoundCloud? Given that Namor is the villain in Wakanda Forever, this is actually a bigger mystery than the lost city of Atlantis now. Just let that sink in.